Suzlon has held firm through the day today, still up about 9.5 or 10.5 in fact, and pretty much around the levels or the average levels that it has been throughout the trading day today. And absolute delight to have with us the management of Suzlon to talk about, well, the wonderful quarter that went by, but also what is likely to be the scenario in FY26 and 27. Mr. JP Chalasani, Chief Executive Officer, Suzlon Group, and Himanshu Mody, Chief Financial Officer of Suzlon Group with us. Gentlemen, both of you, thank you so much for taking the time out to be with us. Couldn't find too many faults with the quarter for sure. You could argue that maybe there were some one-off gains that aided the profit percentage, but stripped for that also, very good performance. Is this something that you penciled in when you started the quarter? And is this a sign of what will come about in FY26?
It's not we're not looking at it as a quarterly results, Neeraj. If you see that the last 24 months, the way in the direction which we have been working on in terms of cleaning up our balance sheet, making it a zero debt company, and then keep on adding as a cash today from a debt company to zero debt plus 2,000 crores sitting on these things with adequate working capital, large order book, and organization built up. You were seeing us gradually ramping up our performance. Even if you see quarter 3 was good, quarter 4 is. So therefore, I think it is not a one-off type of results for quarter 4. I think the efforts what we have put in for the last 24 months is what we reached here. And we expect that this to continue to be in this direction for the next at least 4 quarters. We gave a clear guidance of 60%. For the first time, we gave a guidance that we will grow by 60% across the board and all. We're not looking at it as 60% as a number. It's more shows that we are giving a guidance. Obviously shows that internally whatever work we have done, we now have that confidence that we'll continue to deliver. So I think it's more signaling towards that rather than we're going by 50%, 60%, 70%. We're willing to commit that we'll grow at 60%.
Yeah, and I'm sure these numbers continue for the foreseeable future. But, Himanshu, where I came in terms of the quarter as well was because there was a significant beat on the megawatts delivered as well. The street estimated a number lower than 500. You've delivered higher. You've given a guidance for FY26 as well. And the times are good because the targets are great, but there are times are also uncertain because of all that's happening around the world.
Sure.
And hence I said that it was a great beat for quarter 4. Is this something that we anticipate for FY26, a beat? Are you being conservative in promising and then hoping to over-deliver?
So, well, I'm not sure whether we're being conservative or not. I think we're definitely being realistic on what we're committing for FY26. If you look at Q4, it's the cyclical nature of the business. So the second half of the financial year historically always has about 2/3 of the business that we get, and Q4 within the second half is the highest. So certainly we've delivered the highest number. Doesn't mean that we will outbeat Q4 numbers in Q1, not really. It's of course will go sequentially. So, for example, we did 274 megawatts in deliveries in Q1 last financial year. So you'll need to use that as a benchmark when we use a Q1 performance. So whilst we've proven that, our execution track record now is back and here to stay, but of course, quarter on quarter cyclical will be there.
Sorry, just one follow-up though. I'm inclined to ask this. The numbers that our research team threw up for the month of April pointed to nearly a 1.1 or 1.2 gigawatts of execution. So are we to assume that while you might do, let's say on balance, you might do 60 quarter because it's a seasonal business, quarter 1 this time around could actually be very strong because the installations, at least the quarter has started off very healthily on the installations front.
Yeah. There are 2 different things. One is installations. Second one is supply of turbines.
Okay.
Okay, because that what you're seeing 1.55 gigawatts is supply of turbines.
Okay.
So installations are happening with respect to the turbines supplied a couple of quarters back, and that's what is happening today. So what you saw 1 gigawatt, but that is significant 1 gigawatt because we always had an issue that is the wind sector going to move ahead or it is facing huge amount of headwinds. Wind is problematic, whether it will come up or not is what is changing today. If you look at overall execution from FY23 to FY24 to FY25, there has been about 28% growth. We did about 4.15 gigawatts. In the first month of this year, as you said, that we done 1 gigawatt. We are clear that this year as a country, we will do 6 gigawatts plus as a country. And then this will keep going up, and I expect that we will definitely reach 8-9 gigawatts in the coming years. That would actually enable us to supply more turbines. Today, the issue is not that why we were able to do only 1.55 gigawatts supply, whereas our capacity we can supply is 4.5 gigawatts. Okay. So today, if someone says that, okay, we are willing to offtake 3 gigawatts, we'll supply 3 gigawatts. So what was stopping was that the execution of projects was getting delayed while we have the contracts on hand, because the supplies happen with respect to the execution. But that because now the execution happening at faster speed, your supplies also will pick up the speed. That's how it will work. So that is another reason why we are quite confident that we'll have these growth rates. And in fact, on the commissioning side, it is not 60%. We will actually do 3x to 4x of what we had done last year.
All right. Harsh, the headline should be that as a country, Suzlon believes we'll do 6 gigawatts in FY26.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a large amount of capacity coming on stream. We've seen power rates fall to zero, at least. That's the headline, at least at this point, with regard to power. Is that at all a concern with regard to how the pipeline will evolve, or is there extremely strong traction that you continue to expect regardless of that?
I need to get on to a lecturer mode for that in the power sector, okay? Because this is not so easy.
Happy to hear that lecture.
Not so easy. You're right. The exchange prices during the solar generating hours are touched zero, okay? Because during that period, the supply has exceeded the demand. Of course, in addition to that, we also had the monsoon water. And not just that, even if you look at the last year, in the second half of last year, October to March, 20% of the time, the supply actually exceeded the demand. So therefore, the grid frequency went up. It is not just the prices, even the grid changes. That's happening in the solar hours. But at the same time, when you see during the peak hours in the evenings, that's where the wind generates, okay? Evening 6 to 11, we are facing shortages. And there is expectation that in July and August, you will have a shortage of 25 to 30 gigawatt, probably. So therefore, while we have increased our supply during the solar hours, but overall, if you look at our demand-wise, there are shortfalls. That's the reason you need to look at megawatts separately, and you need to look at electrons separately. The energy-wise, we'll still continue to grow at 5.5 to 6% every year. The GDP is growing.
Correct.
So your power demand will grow. But then, at what point of time you need that power would change. What combination you need to set up, it's a wind plus storage or wind or solar plus wind plus storage will change. But there is nothing called the demand is not there. Demand is there, demand will be there, it will continue to grow, but it will grow at a different times. As far as wind is concerned, more and more wind generation is required today.
So if anything, so you're making a case that there is going to be only increased demand because peak hours will still require wind to continue to power India at least. So you've done execution of around 1.55 gigawatts this year. What's the outlook like for next year? And how can we see this continue to grow maybe over the next 2 to 3 years? Mr. Mody, give us some perspective on what the outlook could be.
So as we said, we've done 1.55 gigawatts in deliveries this year.
Yes.
There's a difference between delivery and the turbines commission. As we've gone on record, we are expecting for FY26, we would do at least 60% growth over FY25, which pegs us at about 2.4 to 2.5 gigawatts of deliveries in FY26. And of course, we are also conscious that we need to not only maintain, but possibly strengthen our margins. So we are very clear that the WTG division would maintain our margins of 23% on the contribution level. And at a consolidated level, we'll be at about 17% in operating profits for the corporation as a whole. So we continue to maintain that outlook going forward for FY26 as well.
And so, a follow on, maybe another 2-year outlook or so, because the 60% is largely something I already have. So what do I work with for the next 2 years, sir?
Yeah, let's look at it. We will give you the sectoral growth rate. Obviously, if the sector grows, we will grow. Okay, is what you need to see. Today, are at 51 gigawatts. Got to reach 100 gigawatts by 2030. So there's a 49 gigawatts in 5 years. So an average of 8 to 9 gigawatts, 9 to 10 gigawatts is what we need to do in the country. Whether we will do 9 to 10 average, we will do 8 to 9 average, but we will do. We will touch 90 and 95 gigawatts. So sector needs to go, will grow. And as far as we are concerned, we have a 4.5 gigawatts of supply capacity. So there is excess capacity sitting there. And this 4.5 can deliver 5.5 provided there is a continuous offtake of turbines. So sector is going to grow. We have a capacity. We want to push more and more turbines at the maintaining our margins. So obviously we don't see any reason that why there should be a halt in the growth, not up to just to 2030, even beyond that. So I think the let's not put the number to what happens in FY27, FY28 onwards, but the reason why we gave the growth number this year, unless there is going to be growth in the subsequent years, we're not going to come and say flash in the pan, 1 year we give guidance and say subsequently it remains flat. No, no way. But let's not put the number to it, but we'll continue to grow. I can promise you that.
But if I do the math, both of you, and if we do 6 in FY26, wherein the average for the next 5 years should be 9.5, then the pace of growth in the subsequent years actually picks up quite dramatically. It does, right?
Yeah. No, you're seeing that the compared to FY23 to FY24, FY24 to FY25 is 28%. 25 to 26, we're talking about 50% growth. When we say 4.15 to 6 gigawatts, obviously we are seeing increase to this thing. The reason why we are saying that is that we did have an issues on execution in terms of the land and grid connectivity. While they continue to be there, we're getting resolved. More importantly, that push will come because the point what we talked about from the grid perspective, you got to add wind capacity today for the grid stability purpose. So therefore, everyone is going to push towards the wind capacity addition. So therefore, you're right, the growth rates are going to be significantly steeper from here to 2030.
Okay. Himanshu, one of the notes says that the margins have gathered steam as execution ramps up. You are guiding to 60, 60, 60. For FY26, I think the adjusted PAT is 60, but nevertheless, let's work with that. But therefore, you're saying that the margins will remain constant as they were at the exit rate of FY25? Or is there a further pickup there? Also, just throwing in one more question. The last time that I spoke to Mr. Chalasani at your office in Pune, I was told that you are being very selective about the order wins that you do. You get the O&M, then you go and bid, etc., so on and so forth. Yep. So is there room for this to actually expand further?
So firstly, to answer your last question, we do not sell any turbine without also signing an O&M contract.
Right.
So every turbine sale contract that we do comes with an O&M contract for a long period, at least about 10-year period. So far as the margins are concerned, Q4 we've ended the consolidated operating margins at about little over 18%, but for the full year we're at about 17%. So we are saying that for the full year FY26, we would still maintain the 17% operating margin. This is despite the WTG division having a larger growth rate in FY26. Now you must realize that the WTG division has a smaller margin as compared to the O&M business, which is a services business. So the more the WTG business keeps growing, our consolidated margins would come under pressure. But despite that, we're maintaining that we would do a 17% margin, operating margin at a console level, which means that the operating synergies or the economies of scale are now clearly coming into play at the company.
Okay.
And so you're generating significant cash flow now. You're at 2,000 crore in profit after tax, which is large. Where do you reinvest? How quickly and how much?
So again, the 2,000 crore in profit after tax this year that you see is after a direct tax asset that got created of about 640 crores. So the operating profit after tax essentially is 1,447 crores for the year. Clearly, the DTA has been created with the confidence that we have the profitability in FY26 as well. So having said that, we have close to about 2,000 crores of cash on the books already from a debt-laden company to having positive free cash. Certainly with the expectations as we move forward in executing the order book over the next few quarters, we will be generating free cash. Some of it gets deployed into working capital, also manufacturing capex for our future growth requirements that we have. Despite which we would have cash available with us. We've been very selective in pursuing M&A opportunities, like we did acquisition of Renom, which is a multi-brand O&M business. So that was 51% at 400 crores. You would see our balance sheet. There's liabilities that have been created on account of residual stake purchase of Renom. So we will be cautiously optimistic and aggressive in looking out for such inorganic growth opportunities. We'll be very selective and make sure that those are EPS accretive to ensure that we put the cash at the right use.
Okay. So FY26 has this different taxation rate, and some assumptions are that you might have additional unassessed losses which might play a shield for FY27 numbers. Anything on that?
So we have about assessed losses of close to 2,500 crores. And based on the assessed losses of 2,500 crores, we've created the DTA of about 640 crores in this quarter. Looking forward, a large part of these, the DTA would get charged off the P&L over FY26. Now, in addition to that, there is close to about 11,000 crores of unassessed losses. Now, as and when we travel through the journey and we have a fair opinion or a fair view outlook on those losses getting assessed or a fair certainty on those, there is a potential of either a DTA getting created or basis the potential of the profitability of the company, we may just utilize those losses. So very difficult for me to answer that on what happens to the residual 11,000 crores that still remains unassessed, but clearly the 2,500 crore that is assessed will now see an impact on the books.
Okay. I have one final question, Mr. Chalasani, and which is that the way the industry is shaping up, I'm guessing order booking or the inflows is not a problem. A lot of people currently within different sects of the energy transition sphere talk about how power evacuation is a challenge. Now, if that continues to remain a challenge, does that in any way impact either order inflows or execution for you as a firm?
No, I think yes, the power evacuation has been an issue. The issue from the point of view of a shift in timelines, not because evacuation not being planned or executed. So there were some delays in terms of a timeline for the power grid to execute the transmission lines and substations, but that's now catching up. So I don't think that should be an issue. There will be, but not to the extent what we faced earlier. And also second, what's going to happen now is that with the dropping of transmission tariff from 0 to, the 25% charging, 50% charging and 75% charging next 3 years, things also will slowly start now moving to the state grid. Till now, everything was in central grid. So capacities also will start coming in state grid, where you don't have the constraint to that extent. So both will complement each other, while we'll continue to see some problems in terms of evacuation, but not to the extent what we've seen in the last couple of years. There would be significant improvement.
Okay. On that note, gentlemen, thank you so much for dropping by in our studios. It was worth it because just got to know so much, and congratulations on a great year.
Thank you.
And all the best for many more.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
That's the top deck of Suzlon talking about how the years ahead could be like. It's not just an FY26 or not just what they've done in FY25, but the decks that have been built for maybe multiple years ahead.